I stand up because I'm too small and I can't see people if I sit down. So, thank you very much for inviting me, and I think that the opening speeches by the Vice Chancellor and Dr. Burke were really enlightening in two senses. First, in the idea that we have not achieved equality and that the battle hasn't been won. Now, as a third-generation feminist, my grandmother was fighting for her rights at the turn of the century in Iran. And I expect that my granddaughter would be also fighting for her rights. So I don't think that we can actually achieve equality in a short time. I do, however, think that there are times when we can do better and there are times when we can do worse. And straight after this meeting this morning, I'm about to go to Parliament, where the House of Lords is doing a vigil, trying to prevent the decision to cut the numbers of MPs. And the reason that I am particularly against this measure is that if constituency become larger, the minorities, who are always a minority, will have much less chance of having representatives, because it's only by having small, focused constituencies where the minority are not in the minority that we actually get representatives. So it seems to me that the blind idea of equality is extremely problematic and is a real barrier in preventing us from achieving goals that has been theoretically set for us and theoretically be included in the equality quest. And I also think that in this debate, one of the things that I would like, two of the things that I would like to put to question is first the question of gender, because the gendered nature of people actually determined their access to rights. And I have argued elsewhere that women have attenuated citizenship rights. That is to say, for centuries, we are the people who gave birth, the fathers were the people who gave nationalities, and in my country, in Iran, this is still the case, and in many other countries. It's very recent that finally the British realized that after all, if you gave birth, you could maybe also give your nationality to your child. It has taken a century. So we have to be aware of the pace that this goes. It has also been argued, and Nira and I go a long way back, it's an argument we've rehearsed for many, many years, that the difficulty with women is not only that we have a double burden of domestic and formal employment, is that given the enormous constraints on our time, if we decide to be politically active, then we really have to give even more of our life to the public and even less to our families. And the whole problem of how do you combine these, which I don't have a solution with. But you know, if anybody does, I would be very grateful. But it actually means that in terms of the demands on women's time and effort, they are less able to be equal citizens. The second question, and this obviously raises all kinds of conflicts of interest and problems. The second question that I want to raise is to problematize the notion of secularism. Secularism, particularly in the 20th century, was seen as an avenue towards equality. And we see a real quest for adopting secularism in order, the theory says, to be inclusive. Now, I actually think that perhaps this quest for inclusiveness has not worked as well as it was assumed to have done. And I think that the examples of Tunisia, currently Egypt, and many other Middle Eastern, Iran, of course, who actually began with an assumption of secularism, shows that in practice it doesn't work for everybody. And often it actually makes religion into a bastion of resistance. And therefore, it actually generates an alternative source of dissent in contexts where people of the faith feel excluded by the faithlessness of society. And we really do need to think around this problem. Excuse me. In discussing this with the French, I often get the answer, but look at how successful France is. And look at how successful secularism has been. After all, Turkey had a prime minister who was a woman. France had actually Sarkozy appointed 3 women to various cabinet posts, including Fariha Avna, who actually heads Ni Pute Ni Soumise, a person who is absolutely clear that Muslim women are not submissive, but also if they choose their own dress code, they're not made into into prostitutes. And so the evidence that Sarkozy had been in his earlier career presenting was, here you are, Minister of Justice, a Muslim woman, Minister of Urban Affairs, a Muslim woman, Minister of Sport, a Muslim woman. Bravo, we've done it. What is interesting is that the period of office of these Muslim women was quite short. And in the current reorganization of his cabinet, heading for the next election, we do not see any Muslim women present. And in fact, what we see in France is an open discussion about an acceptability of Muslims, so that Le Pen's daughter, who is gaining a great deal of support, says she finds it offensive to see Muslims praying in the street. She doesn't think these men are praying in the street because they're not allowed to build a mosque big enough to accommodate them all. No, equality says we are secular, they're praying in my street, I'm offended.